As a screenwriter, you want to be careful about how you deploy your troops. How's it? This is Chop Screenplay Prep. Troop deployment. What on earth am I on about? How does this relate to screenwriting? What I'm on about are those awkward scenes, often seen in TV shows, but often also in the cinema, where something happens and it seems like it's there because the writer needed it to happen to facilitate something else. When writing, you might get to the nugget of what needs to happen, and you have your characters in a position whereby some bit of revelation or drama or tension happens. But to get them there, you realize you need to get your ducks in order beforehand, and you write something to facilitate their arrival at this particular and poignant scene. So it's much like just deploying troops, just get them there on the front line because that's where we need them, and you don't think about how they get there and that it flows logically and that they get there with everything that they need to do battle. So in the same way with writing, you can get yourself into a scenario where you're desperate for your characters to be at a specific position, but it jars when watched back on the screen. And the audience, the moment something doesn't make sense and it jars, they're taken out of the experience and therefore can be let down when it comes to that poignant scene. They're not going to be ready for the emotions or the tensions that might follow in your carefully planned climactic scene if their mind is wondering, well, hang on, how? But he just, and what, he's suddenly there? Let's put this into perspective with an example. I'm watching a streaming show called Y: The Last Man. So Y referring to the Y chromosome, in case no one has heard of this show. It's post-apocalyptic, very interesting scenario. But the specific example I have is relevant because I've just seen it, and it jarred for me, and it ruined the rest of the flow of the scene. So in Y: The Last Man, we have these two characters, Hero and Sam. And they're talking together in the living room when Sam decides to leave the room and go on upstairs. Hero, literally seconds behind, decides to follow because the conversation is not done. We then cut to a new scene upstairs in a bedroom where Sam is already lying down in bed like he's been there for 10 minutes. And then Hero walks in and she approaches him in the bed and continues talking. For me, that scene jarred because it seemed obvious that the screenwriter couldn't wait to get to the scene in the bedroom and didn't really fill in the gaps as to the journey upstairs. A client once said to me that they had the concern about journeys between rooms or scenes or venues. And essentially, you don't need to show a journey. But the problem with this situation was the scene was initiated downstairs with Sam leaving the room and Hero hot on his heels. Cut to upstairs, the next scene, we have Sam already in bed when Hero enters. So that really meant that she would have to have paused on the stairway to allow Sam to get ahead, to get into bed and be comfortable. But essentially that wouldn't happen. It doesn't work. We could possibly give the screenwriter some grace. I don't know the facts here because I don't have access to the screenplay. But the point is, if you write in such a way that the film crew can't make that mistake, then all the better. Of course, I could be wrong here and the screenwriter wrote appropriately, but I'm assuming not, in the sense that the director's not really going to make a decision like that unless properly guided. So there's a bit of possible benefit of the doubt here, but what I'm saying to you guys is, when you are setting up your transitions between scenes, have them flow, I could say naturally, but also logically. Don't allow your audience to nitpick or be taken out of the flow, taken out of the story. I wasn't watching to nitpick. And to be honest, I'm pretty good at switching off switching off the academic side when watching the screen. And it's usually something pretty awkward or drastic for me to be taken out of the story and, oh, that didn't work. So, I mean, this isn't huge, but it was enough for me to jar. And it's a simple fix. You don't hurry what happens before to get to what you want to happen. But I would have written that scene in this way. I would have kept Hero in the living room, allow Sam to leave and go up the stairs. Then when we cut to the next scene, the audience can accommodate the fact that minutes may have passed, maybe even an hour, doesn't matter, because when you see Sam lying on the bed and the camera showing the door into this bedroom, when Hero walks into the room, you're then happy that time might have passed, she might have done things in between, Sam's been lying on the bed for a bit, maybe napping. So when they get to their crucial conversation, you're just allowing that to pass. You're not criticizing the mechanics and logistics of how they both got upstairs and did she pause and how did that happen. Just eliminate all of that. Another example of all of this is props. You need something to be in a place for a specific action. God forbid, might it be the murder weapon, but you need to have these things lined up such that they appear naturally or there the whole time. So don't write hurriedly to pave the way just so you can get your big scene working. Just watch your placement of props and ensure that they are introduced in a steady manner and not shoehorned in there because, you suddenly need it. Therefore, what you want to be doing when you are going over your draft of your screenplay, or possibly whilst editing, is look at those transitions between the scenes and just watch how the action moves from one to the other. This is more relevant where characters are in scene A and B. I mean, if you're cutting to parallel story or different set of characters elsewhere, then this isn't an issue. But when you're having sequential flow and people are moving between rooms, getting into vehicles, whatever, just watch that you're not writing things in because they need to happen to enable the big scene that you have in mind, indeed that you might have already written up front. Typically when I'm writing, I'm pretty visual and might sit there and imagine a screen in front of me, maybe I close my eyes, and I watch the action before I formulate it into the written word on the computer. If you can learn to visualize and get a grasp of the flow of events, it's going to help you work things out, and when you then get to the writing stage, hopefully you're just a little step closer to having a natural flow. But then also double check that what you're writing accommodates everything nicely and that you're not putting things in to get to the scene that you're really desperate to write. Often when we read through screenplays, you can see where the screenwriter was excited and spent time writing and where other bits were filler. They were to plug gaps. And if that's obvious to the reader, then that doesn't come across so well. It just looks like you're rushing for the good bits. To a reader, that's going to come across as a little careless and that you're not really putting effort into the glue between the scenes. The moment a reader senses that the screenwriter is a little careless with certain scenes, it then sets a state of mind. It means that that reader then is looking out for the next part of your screenplay that might be letting you down. They're on the lookout, essentially, to catch you out. If you've made one mistake, then, well, maybe you've made more. The reader needs to check the integrity of your work. So don't give them the excuse, don't give them the opportunity to be nitpicking and picking up on things that ultimately you can fix by doing diligent drafts and checking your scenes and being sure that you have a good natural flow. I hope that was useful in getting your screenplay closer to a polished finish and not giving the industry any excuse to rip you apart. So this is very much editorial work and tightening your scenes and making sure it works perfectly. And the best of luck with your screenplay, and I'll see you in the next video.